All right, so welcome to episode 136 of Stagewear. This is the second Fringe Roundup for the Toronto Fringe Festival, and we'll go around and everybody say your name and what show you're representing, and we'll get things started.
Right on. I'm Danny Pagett. I wrote and directed Prank, which is going on at the Tarragon Extra Space.
Hey, I'm Tom McGee. I wrote and directed Featherweight and starred in it on Wednesday. Going on at the Pagett Town.
I'm Lafrance. I wrote, directed, and consistently star in I Think I'm Dead at the TPM Backspace.
I'm Janelle Hanna. I'm in Robert by Brianna Brown at St. George the Martyr Church.
Nice. I'm in final exam. Our last show's today at 4 o'clock, so if you make it out, that's great. But if not, see some other stuff. So just to jump in, I mean, last week we didn't get a chance to talk about your show because you weren't here last time. Could you tell me a little bit about I Think I'm Dead?
Yeah, it's a storytelling show about insomnia and parallel universes and mental and physical breakdowns of all sorts. It's the most personal thing I've ever written, but I masquerade it as a thing that's not going to be all that personal. But it's just a lot of secrets is all it is, and it's probably the only thing I've ever written that I'm proud of.
Oh,
Yay!
Well, you've also been performing. I mean, how long have you been performing that?
That show for almost a year now. I opened it in Edmonton last year, which, if any of you are ever curious about opening a show at Edmonton Fringe, that's probably not the place you want to do that. It's a big festival. It's a big one. They have expectations.
Well, they also, I mean, a lot of shows arrive at Edmonton with already some buzz that they've built up.
Yeah, most of them are not, you didn't just finish writing them 4 days before. So, yeah. So that's why I'm taking it back to Edmonton this summer.
Nice.
Sandra Seamus did that with her first show.
Oh, yeah?
Was she premiered My Boyfriend's Back and There's Gonna Be Laundry at the Edmonton Fringe, which is probably one of the most Fringe titles I've ever heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But so she premiered hers there. So long history of doing that.
Yeah.
But you've taken that to Australia as well.
Yeah, took it to Australia, took it to the States, did it a bunch of times. So now it's correct. And now I'm doing it right, and now I'm super happy with it. But yeah, I toured the world with this one.
Do you find it difficult because this show is, as you say, it's one of the most personal things you've written, but you masquerade it as not personal.
Yeah.
But do you find it difficult performing that every night, or have you gotten into a groove of it?
Now I'm in a bit of a groove, but it always depends because every once in a while someone will see the show who's involved in it, and that throws me off. It's bizarre right, when that happens. But no, otherwise, generally, if I'm feeling good, then it'll be fine. There's still once in a while where I start, this week I've had a lot of trouble sleeping again, which hasn't happened to me in a long time now. And so there's times where I start talking about when I start to believe that I'm losing my mind when I'm sleep deprived, and I'm like, oh no. What if it's happening right now? And so the parts where I question reality become way too real. But that works out. I think that makes me give a better performance because it's true again.
It becomes experiential theater.
Yeah.
It's a one-man immersive.
Yeah.
This could be happening right now, you guys.
Yeah, so it's not as difficult as it was, but it's still pretty draining to do. Because it takes a lot out.
How do you deal with that? Like after the show, are you like, I need to be alone for the next few hours, or?
I tend not to really do that anymore. I try to take a little bit of time to calm down, but I do close the show by telling everyone in the audience that if they want to, I'm there to talk or whatever, and that's been happening a lot. So I don't really get the 10 minutes of teardown is my time to get ready, and then I go in to had coffee with someone for an hour after the show yesterday. So there's no time to fully calm down. But that's okay. That's just sort of the thing I do now. But otherwise, if I have the time, I totally will take the time to calm down because I'm usually way too just amped up. Because it's also the fastest show I've ever done. It's 4 pages longer than the last solo show I did, and it runs 4 minutes longer.
Good God.
Wow.
Wow. Well, I find it really interesting with personal stories that when you I did a like much lower stakes, but I did a solo show when Honest Ed's closed. That was about Honest Ed's and the experience of Honest Ed's. It was awesome, and I was in Honest Ed's office, and I went and bought the 4 final things I could find at Honest Ed's, and basically made a show about like who built these things and what are these? Why would any human make this? And like I found like an animal grave marker with a typo in it. That just like had a poem on it. And I was like, someone wrote this. Ish. But it was interesting because what it basically did was enable everyone who's at this giant art event and having a great time at the art, but also like a bunch of people are like, I just fucking want to mourn Honest Ed.
Yeah.
And it opened up those conversations. Yeah, I'd finish the show and they'd just be like, I once bought a pair of jeans here. Pockets are on the outside. But
They all have that voice.
yes, literally every single person I talked to was like some weird old British lady. It was like maybe kindly, but possibly mad for
Could be a
Gryffindor
murderer.
not winning.
Oh yes,
today.
absolutely.
But yeah, I can only imagine with the show that's like that person, but also about on top of it. But like I don't know, I'm a bad sleeper myself, and no one fucking talks about it. So
Yeah, that's
having
true.
like the permission to talk must be great for the audience, but also must be fucking exhausting for you. Boy.
Yeah, after a while. That's cool. The more exhausted I am, the more I sleep.
Yeah.
We've
Good work,
also just
audience.
been joined by Rebecca Perry, producer of Bikeface, which is one of the
Patrons' picks.
this year. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Thank
Yes.
you very much.
Yeah. So we just talked about Al's show, but generally I want to ask everybody. So, how's your Fringe been?
Well, it's 10 a.m. and I'm drinking a Red Bull, so that should give us
This tells me quite a bit.
We both helped close that silent disco last
Yum,
night,
yum,
Tom.
yum. Yep.
You were there on the dance floor.
Yeah, well, I was near the dance floor with my broken toe being like, that looks fun.
Okay.
I will remember.
No, you mean don't stop believing.
Yeah.
All of it. All of it.
Yep.
Fringe has been good. I'm not at 47 shows, which I'm very dissatisfied
How
about.
many did you manage
I'm
to
at
do?
34 right now.
Still.
She didn't do the full.
Fell short
not
of
even
the
full-
But
Chua
there's
twins.
2 days, people.
There's still
so,
2 days. She can
Wow.
still do the full
Yeah.
Chua.
Yeah. and in fairness, like I purposefully did not see the 11 p.m. show last night because I wanted to go to the silent disco.
Oh,
fair.
hey.
That's fair.
A couple of things that I've noticed this year that I thought I would talk to you guys about. This is one of the first years that I can recall seeing so much discussion about reviews.
Yes.
Yes.
I was going
And
to bring that up.
the-
I
quality
myself
of reviews?
started a big thread.
Well, this is the thing is occasionally there's like I've seen like somebody complaining about the review that they got and maybe rebutting it, but this is the first year I've seen it on like a widespread level.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, has something happened with the reviewers
Yes.
this year?
Yep. Yes.
So actually, Now Magazine, in order to cover every single review, has employed some people from the Generator TO program that have just finished basically a training program that educates them on how to be a reviewer in Toronto, specifically, to the best of my understanding. I actually attended a Generator TO talk yesterday that was about criticism.
I totally
and
wanted to go to
reviews.
that.
Yeah.
It was really cool. The 3 biggest topics, just so everyone knows, including the podcast listeners, is so they were basically talking about reviewing shows that are considered niche, but in the sense of like disability arts or sign language theater and stuff like that. And those were sort of the 2 big ones, and that was led by Shay Ehrlich, who is a reviewer specifically for those niches. The other discussion was what is the future of reviews and criticism, and so that was the discussion I joined, which was led by Carly Magga, which was very interesting because it was talking about how as newspapers and sort of print decline and social media rises, how is that going to change reviews and what people are attracted to? So she was talking about, for example, instilling like, you know, having somebody film their gut reaction right after a show and then talking about it 72 hours later and then a week and a half later and sort of how that would change how someone felt about it. And then the third and final topic was something that I believe the first sort of test run for it was at the Storefront Theater with the numbers game, which was having a critic present in like the first stages of rehearsal and then before they open and then after they've opened, and sort of seeing how that changes their perception of the piece because they actually get to see how much work goes into the piece. So they were all interesting topics, but back to sort of reviews specifically, there was a lot of discussion within all 3 of the tables as to what is best practices for a review, because a lot of people who were speaking up about bad reviews. It didn't surprise me that those reviewers were the greenest around the ears, if you will. And also, they were the reviewers that didn't want to accept any sort of open dialogue after they had put their review out into the world.
So to preface this with kind of a sad story, I kicked 2 teenagers off the John Kaplan chair yesterday.
Good.
Because they were like making out on the John, and they moved the sign, and I was like, "You sons of bitches, get the fuck out!"
Yeah.
And then I had a long chat with a friend because the change that I've noticed. It's interesting though because it was a bit unexpected for me, but this year the big shift I've noticed is with John's absence is a huge gaping hole in the festival in terms of like
It's been talked about.
someone, absolutely, but like someone who approaches things constructively and like I've
love.
seen, I saw him deliver like one of the most scathing reviews both outside of theater and on paper that I've ever seen, and it was still so nice and constructive and kind while still being firm and ultimately for this particular show corrective because it was like, please don't do this.
Like constructive criticism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and he was mad. He was really mad about it, but he still delivered like a really fair, even-handed review. And so I was really curious what was going to happen in kind of in lieu of John. And what I found really interesting is Glenn Sumi's kind of really stepped hard into that role.
Yes.
He's
Yeah, I've
very.
noticed
I
that.
really
that
commend
tweet,
Glenn.
and because for someone who has made a point of saying like I don't really want to get to know the artists, like that's not my, like that interferes with my job, and who I've always felt is a bit more distant as a reviewer. He sent out a really useful tweet a couple days ago, which is still a sentence that I hate saying about anything, but basically being like, hey, listen, if you got a 1N or a 2N, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. Like, that's one reviewer's opinion. Go to work. And so there's such great response to it and everything else. And I've seen him do that on a few things where he's seen shows and he's like, hey, I loved this. I disagree with the review that we published, but that's just my opinion. And it doesn't even validate that one. I'm just saying this was my experience of the thing. I liked it. And that's so fucking healthy and so helpful. And I didn't, like, I love Glenn, but I didn't expect it from Glenn. But I think he's kind of seen that absence and has been, I'm now the reviewer.
He's stepping in. On the other side of that coin, I've attended a few shows with him where other people have reviewed it and given it like 5 stars, and he's been like, I also don't agree with that. So, but I actually do appreciate that he is acknowledging that these reviewers are voicing their objective opinions, but also as someone who is much more seasoned, it's really interesting to me to sort of hear what he thinks about things, because it's true, he's seen almost as much as John in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he was like John's right-hand man for so long, and so it's interesting to see him sort of like man this like team of 12 reviewers he didn't have before, and also sort of navigate that relationship. Because as far as I can tell from what he said, like it's a really interesting and fascinating one, because he's kind of in charge of like nourishing their minds, but also he has to educate them on best practices at the same time.
I've always appreciated Glenn's separation from the artists. Because John Kaplan was always very like friendly with artists. And he had lots of artists who were friends and things like that. But I've always kind of appreciated Glenn's, like Glenn doesn't hang around after the show. He doesn't go to the reception. He doesn't make friends because he doesn't want, like you said, he doesn't want his objectiveness to be compromised.
This is the first year where I actually realized that because like I'm friends with Carly, I'm friends with Steve.
Two people who very much will talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. But it suddenly meant that all 3 of them were like, it's conflict of interest for me to review you. And I was like, yup.
No, absolutely.
Fuck.
Well, that's like actually like good on them for that.
100%. But it was one of those funny moments where you're like, oh, I'm really glad that I have these people in my life. But suddenly, like 3 major reviewers can't review my shit. Ruh-roh.
There were objectively some unfair reviews.
Absolutely. There were also some pretty quick 5 stars as well.
Yes.
The quick ones, quick 5s.
That's still an unfair review.
I've seen a few unfair reviews. There was one that I saw today that was not, and
they agree.
It was a review that somebody had made us think about that I didn't think was actually that unfair of a review. Now it's sort of becoming, they're sort of like spinning, like the company's sort of spinning it as like
they're using it
as an underdog story.
Like Marine Land a few years ago.
You mean Sealand for legal reasons.
It's like Marine Land hasn't any money left to sue anyone, don't worry about it.
But yeah, there's been a few that I've seen like floating around that I'm like, yeah, no, that's totally unfair. But but I saw one sort of floating around today that was about and you know, like, I haven't seen this show, so everything with a grain of salt, but I read the review and I read the criticism of it, and the criticism of it was mainly that the reviewer had said there were parts that were spoken in Spanish, and they found it confusing. They found that it got in the way of the plot because there wasn't a translation, and the sort of counter campaign to it has been like, Toronto is a very diverse city.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Spanish speakers in it. We will not do this, blah, blah, blah. But like, all that the reviewers seemed to be saying in the review was that it made it hard, that maybe dramaturgically you could tweak it so that we can understand the plot better, even if we don't understand what they're saying.
I've seen shows where it's a different language, but they've staged it in a way where you understand through body language.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's sort of what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
There's ways to communicate without necessarily having the words above their head.
Exactly.
Well, and from what I understand from that particular show, they'd spent a lot of time talking about that and had addressed it in terms of how they felt about their staging. And what's interesting is now actually responded.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was I was talking to someone involved last night, and they were saying that Glenn got in touch, and because they'd requested another review.
Yeah.
And Glenn was like, "Well, I can't send anyone else,
Yeah.
but I can't post another review, but I am happy to send someone, and we can do a follow-up about it." Which again, to my mind, is like signals such an interesting thing from the reviewing community, which
Right.
is let's actually engage,
Yes.
which is night and day from, like, you know, I still remember, you know, my first solo Fringe show, like sitting there in the green room of that god awful private boys school on halfway to Tarragon, sweltering heat, and like flipping through I and Now consecutively trying to find the reviews. And that meant everything. Like, those reviews were the make or break, do or die, get that review, and like that's your ticket.
Yeah.
Whereas now but it seems like all the reviewing landscape is kind of flattened in an interesting way.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me that they're responding.
Yeah.
Because
There's been some amendments too. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Oh, really?
The one that comes to mind is, hold on, I want to get the title right. The history of beer. I think that's what it is.
The history of beer.
The history of beer.
A brief history.
Thank
Oh,
you.
right there.
A brief history of beer. Thank you, Al. So basically, there was part of one of the reviews for Brief History of Beer complained about the fact that, I guess, Tarragon was making it hard for people to buy beer and bring it in, even though that was part of the show.
Right.
It was something they had negotiated with Toronto Fringe, and I guess there was just a few wires crossed with Tarragon. But the problem is that shouldn't make it into a review.
Yeah.
So what's nice is that is one thing that I know got amended like 24 hours after it was released, and that made Tarragon sort it out. So like, I think that was a win-win situation by people just speaking up. So it's interesting because that review almost helped fix the situation.
Right, yeah.
It's funny because I previously have not really seen responses to reviews that were not anything other than sour grapes. This is the first time that I've seen people,
yeah, that's a good
like,
point.
some people with legitimate gripes, but also like some response from the reviewers at all.
Yeah.
So
I think it's changed too because so many publications are reviewing everything now,
Yeah.
right? So that changes the game because there are just more reviews
Oh,
out there.
They
absolutely.
need more manpower.
And it's also interesting just to see like how one publication is like raving about something and the other one's panning it.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of that going on, right?
that is
The
that's
same
such an
show.
interesting thing, right?
Yeah.
There's no universe. There almost nothing that's like this. Everybody loves this show. It's
And there's a few of them.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a
There's
few.
always gonna be
There's
some.
one,
Also,
that
ladies
got,
on a bike.
there's one that got 5 N's and then like got like an F from My Entertainment World.
Yeah.
I actually think that's a good mark of theater
No,
because you want
actually,
people to
yeah.
either love it
Yeah.
or hate it. You
Yes.
don't want them lukewarm.
Yeah.
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 Your
Yeah.
job is to
That-
get a
that
reaction,
happens, yeah.
right?
Was that
One left
night?
hour, yeah.
One left
Yeah,
hour?
one left hour.
And the Star
Because
raved
that's
about it as well.
literally like the people like the My Entertainment World review was
Yeah.
the first one. They gave them an F.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like getting raves. And to their credit, like they're
Interesting
making
piece of
theater that's like interesting. That
Mhm.
nobody's walking out of that saying
Yeah.
it was all right.
Yeah, so they have
Which is
opinions.
good, yeah.
They
And
start
that's
discussions.
that's your job, right?
Yeah.
I think as an artist, good or bad, whatever, your job is to get a reaction, and obviously they are.
Forgettable theater is
Yeah.
the worst.
Oh,
When you
yeah.
walk out, like, someone's like, "What'd you see?" And you're like, "Oh, I saw, oh God, my I don't know, my
Yeah.
friend stage managed it.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember what it was. But
Somebody
it
was
fine.
in love, I think.
Yeah, and I think it was love. It was kind of funny, but also kind of sad. It was an hour, and it was at a theater that had air conditioning, but it was hard to get to.
Yeah.
Speaking of discussions,
theater
Janelle and I
Yeah.
this week have There was a show that we both saw. We actually talked about it on the podcast last week. It provoked a very interesting discussion from a lot of different companies. But basically, the long and short of it is someone got a one-end review that said some very inflammatory, very accusatory things. And I saw the show, and I couldn't even think of what possibly they could be referring to.
Right.
Which I think shows that, reviews do need an open dialogue. Because I was having trouble understanding where this reviewer thought this was coming from.
Yes.
So after reading it, I attended the show again. There was I didn't, because it was a comedy stand-up thing, I realized that they were, there was different jokes that were going in every night. I think they have about 90 minutes of material, and whatever 60 comes out that night comes out. So the day I saw it, didn't see anything. The second time I saw it, there was one joke where I was like, there's a tweak you could add to that. Yeah. But I know Janelle's been really awesome. We've been trying to get people out to go and see it. I think the thing that bothers me the most was, unfortunately, at the end of the review, I'm trying to say this tactfully, they said some really discouraging things that I think would make this stand-up comedian maybe not want to continue, and that to me is very dangerous, because the Fringe is about experimenting.
Yes.
The Fringe is also about championing new kinds of theater, and so I don't think that this critic should have put down the only comedian out there who is doing a set about Asperger's because he has Asperger's, and he's sick of people who don't have Asperger's telling him what to do. And so I think it's important to say, I acknowledge you're doing something different. I acknowledge you're doing something important. Keep honing your material. Don't just stamp on somebody.
I know, and I don't see the point.
I didn't feel right about it.
No, me neither. And I don't, he's touring too. He's not from here. And we all.
That's so hard.
I don't know actually about Al, but because we don't know each other, but
he's from Montreal, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, you said pretty earlier, so I feel but and I don't have this experience, but it's one thing to get a shitty review when you're here and you have a community of people
that can spin it with you.
Yes, and all these people behind you, and it's another thing to not be from here, get panned, and I think that's when reviews do matter for them a little bit more than perhaps Toronto-based artists, right?
Toronto is a very difficult place for an artist who's not from here.
Yeah.
As Al can attest to, and I've seen many people, and I also have encountered people when I was touring who Toronto isn't even on their radar.
Anytime I've done the Fringe circuit, it has blown my mind. I hate to say it, how much more welcoming the other Fringes are.
I don't hate to say it because I think we need to change.
I know we do. You know what it is? I think it kind of shocked me because I was like, why is it so easy to Fringe everywhere else?
Yeah, it's like if you go to other cities and they're like, welcome, we love having you here. And Toronto's like, fuck whatever.
Yeah.
Well, we have 12 festivals happening today.
Yeah.
We do not give a shit.
That's the other thing.
I posted something earlier about this.
I have friends who won the CAF lottery, which allows you to select your entire circuit, and purposely skipped Toronto because they're like, no, I still want to feel good halfway through July.
Shit.
Like I'd like to have the energy to do the rest of the tour, so I'm not going to go to Toronto because it's
a rat race.
It's known as being a place that's hyper competitive and less friendly in a way. Like this was a city that had issues with people posting over each other for years, which is not a thing anywhere else because no one else will refer to someone as a competitor. In a Fringe, you're just like, that sold out? Great, maybe that overflow will come to me. It's never like, those fuckers, they sold out! Which it feels like that happens here, and it's just, the main issue that a lot of us have who are touring is the incredible strictness on things like time. I went over by 30 seconds on the show, and then I got an email from a festival, and I'm like, I went over 30 seconds because I talked to the audience that applauded for longer than I'm used to. I'm terribly sorry that I did this to you people. And so
the mayor got an email that day.
Would you agree that? Oh, sorry.
That was just a joke. I'm good.
Well, would you agree, would it be safe to say, Al, that Toronto, because there's so much going on at once, even though people are postering on top of each other, it might be that someone's postering for their folk gig at the Monarch or something instead, or do you find
in past year? No, I mean specifically Fringe.
Specifically Fringe?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but not this year because there's no postering anymore because there's nowhere to do it, which is surprising and also weird.
That's really weird. That's a disappointing
strange
thing is that there's nowhere to put your poster.
Yeah, it's because you're in a whole hockey rink, right? With that all of the boards are permanently damaged because that's the point of boards in a hockey rink.
Yeah.
So why can't we just poster all over that shit for a week?
Well, there's that one, and again, this goes back to part of our discussion
Yeah.
last time. There's the one poster board
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
by the tiny box office, off to the side.
Yeah.
Shipping container.
The shipping container, off to the side, nowhere near the place where people actually are.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, why is that there?
Well, and I know that, part of the reason that they instituted that was I was there during, like, the most disastrous poster rush
Oh yeah.
a few years ago, and
Someone break a leg?
People got hurt in that.
Yeah, well,
like,
I
actually.
watched.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
but your point about postering over people, like, what was nuts was it was like the running of the Fringe, and they're like, on the count of 3, go.
Oh
It was like 1,
god.
2,
It was
3,
so
and,
stupid.
and the rule was as long as your posters were attached, you could do whatever you want. So the Randolph folks made like the size of a fucking sail,
Right.
because there were 1,000 of them,
Yeah.
and they ran it like width-wise. So you would have to have like burst through it like a football player.
Which would have been very cool.
Yeah, it would have been very cool.
You know what my regrets are.
Should have been a Tom-shaped hole in that.
Yeah, exactly, like sideways running.
But
But when
didn't
it's
the dancer break their ankle or something?
something like that. I mean, like a bunch of shit went
Okay.
down, but I
Something
remember
really
like
bad.
I had my one shaky shake poster, and I was like, I guess we're doing this. And then like within fire started pistol, but it felt like it started running, and I watched someone fall,
Yeah.
and I literally had to leap over her.
Yep.
And I was like, in midair, I was like,
questioning your
holy
humanity.
shit, I hope you're okay.
Oh.
But it's also a stampede, so I can't turn around and help you,
Yes,
because then
exactly.
I'll get hurt.
Yeah.
Just
It's actually
sums
worse.
up Toronto Fringe right here.
But
Like,
no,
the,
well, that was
competitive
kind of
and
just that they
bad.
cut out like years ago though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like that because then they
Because
just made the
safety.
poster wall in Honest Ed's in the alleyway,
Yeah.
which they had for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was nice because it was you had to look at you had to walk right past it to get to the bar.
I really liked being able to walk down there and go, what's playing? Like,
Yeah.
because you get to see that show's visual representation.
Absolutely.
That they've had time to work on for longer than
There
they
are
had
still
to-
shows I'm hearing about now that I
Yeah.
have not heard about
Yes.
at the
Yeah.
fest.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that sounds great. Oh, it closed yesterday? Shit.
Yeah.
On the fact that this is like a practice that was done a couple of years ago, the issue, it takes several years of good behavior for Fringe's reputation on the circuit to actually
Totally.
change. Because like on a touring level, particularly, like you won't necessarily do the same city every year, right? And so
I mean, actually,
when I posted last week on Facebook, just like, oh hey, Toronto, still spiritless, still strict on rules, right? Because that's what it felt like. Because again, this is also the only place where like I've met before today, where I met 2 of you that I had not met before. I met one Toronto artist the entire time I'm here because there's not the same level of mingling that I experience everywhere else, right?
Right.
So I just posted that, and then it became a giant thread of a bunch of people who don't do Toronto anymore telling me about all the things they hated about the times they were here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not that's not necessarily the thing anymore, but it takes a long
Oh,
time
absolutely.
Yeah.
for
To
that
change
to
around.
change.
Yeah.
And
no, I was just gonna say, like, this idea should bother us. Like,
It bothers
as
me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said this to your partner the other night. Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be the artists that change it.
Yeah.
Not to say that Fringe doesn't
I had
care.
a great time this year,
Totally,
to be clear.
totally.
it is starting.
But it's,
You can
we
feel people
have to
wanting to
change
shift.
it,
Yes.
right?
yeah.
But again, there's certain things that are barriers. The like receiving an email because you went over 30 seconds is kind of bullshit. Also, to be honest, I know a lot of people who are done with Fringe because of the no latecomers.
Yeah.
Like
We've all had family members, agents,
Yeah.
important people
But
be
it's still,
20
like,
seconds late.
literally, like, what does that do except alienate the audience, right? Especially with the way that some of the venue managers deal with it.
Maybe there could be a choice, like you have like
in
a
Montreal
5-minute
and in
period.
a lot of other cities, you
Yeah.
get to say whether or not you want to be able to have
Yeah.
Yeah.
Halifax, you got to do
latecomers.
that. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and you can decide an amount of time for a lot of places.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like,
So you
up
can
to.
be like, all right, well, if you show up 12 minutes in, nothing's going to make any fucking sense.
Yes, yeah.
Before that, please.
A
Yeah.
friend
One of the
mine
things
has
that I
a,
always
half-hour
appreciated-
children's show, and people showed up at 25 minutes. 'Cause
Yeah,
there was
cool.
a loose entry.
Did they still
Yeah.
get it?
Oh, they're there.
Last
Like,
5
Muppets.
minutes.
Like, oh, happy ending. We
get
did it. We did it, guys. Sorry for looking
One of
at
the things that I always appreciated about Montreal was the fact they had an artist liaison. And
Yeah.
that was like, in Toronto, if you want to answer to a question, who
Yeah.
like,
You may not get it at all.
you
It
probably
might
are not
be
going to get it, but
overstretched.
in,
Eventotron.
yes. Yes. In Montreal, there's like, so they still, they like, there's somebody who's like, that's their job.
Mhm.
They're the artist liaison. Got a question? They will tell you where you need to go to check in. Do you need help with like, did you lose your billet? Like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, talk to this person. They're like, that's their job.
Well, and I know this year too, and I don't know where this went, but they were trying to connect up like international companies with a Toronto company.
Yeah,
like,
that's
and
cool,
did
yeah.
they do
Like a
that?
partnership.
That was offered, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
well, like that's a start, you know.
Yeah,
like, we
absolutely.
gotta
Yeah,
be doing
yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like
That's
That's the
that.
thing.
you
Like, it's
know?
nice to know that the festival is aware.
Yeah.
But there's
It was
still a level of disconnect, but I think it'll just
Totally.
take a time. This
Yeah.
is also the only festival in all of Canada where I haven't met the festival director.
Oh, well,
which-
yeah, that's
which has
actually,
never-
that's actually very true.
Which has never happened to me. And like, you
Right.
know, in Edmonton's a 300 show festival where every single person meets Murray within 48 hours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very true. I remember
So-
being in Edmonton and like,
that's what-
the,
and, like,
the
yeah,
director
yeah.
was always made the point, like, he
Last
met
year he was
everybody.
postering on day one
And,
for
and
other
he
people.
would always buy tickets to the show that had the least tickets sold that day.
Yeah.
Like, he was so sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, and I remember going to Montreal and you get a hug from Amy. Like,
Yeah.
you meet everybody, and
Yeah.
here you
Yeah.
and you know what? It's when I was doing shows here that I remember like even doing like the volunteer breakfast, and like the staff was like, yeah, whatever. Like it was like I was treated with contempt by staff for helping.
Ooh.
You know, and it was
Yes.
like I'm
helping.
we are here like the yes. We don't get to do our shows without the Fringe, but the Fringe doesn't happen without the artists.
Absolutely.
There needs to be some kind of accommodation
Yes.
with the artists for that's just like more than just like, well, we give you the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, having an artist liaison would be very
It
helpful.
would be
Yeah,
super helpful.
absolutely.
I know
Um,
in Edinburgh they have a whole building. I know one of Lucy's plans is to eventually make something like that, just as a heads up.
Yeah.
It was something that wasn't accomplished this year, but as I'm sure you can all agree, a lot of big changes happened this year.
Yes.
And I know some people have feelings about Eventatron, but that is the Edinburgh model.
I
And
love
s-
Eventatron.
Me too. It makes my life so much easier. And so I know it's frustrating sometimes, but basically also like with making the program just comedy in this section, just musicals. Basically, the more Lucy aligns us with Edinburgh, the more that we can probably become a much larger scale festival, which if I had to guess might be the goal, which is good. And I also know they made a concerted effort this year now to do a lot of pre-coverage with international artists, like for example, Adam Schwartz got a big mention in Now. The Mystical Wishes Puppet Company, which had Shadow Kingdom and Space Hippo, got a whole article to themselves. I know that's not a lot, but by Toronto standards, that is much better
That's
than
a
last
lot
year.
by Toronto standards.
Yeah,
So things are starting to shift.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just
I
because we
think
were talking
it
to
just
negative,
takes
we're
time.
gonna
Yeah,
add
totally.
to positive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for adding
Yeah.
some positives.
Oh, I'd like to
Yeah,
side
please.
note. I realized I didn't meet Lucy. I also didn't go to the poster run, so perhaps she was there and that would have been my opportunity. But my opening was at the same time.
Well,
Yeah.
and to your point, Rebecca, I think a lot of the issues I'm seeing with this year's Fringe are that the festival is we're in that like awkward teenage pubescent like growing pains phase where it's
The 30-year
Yeah.
teenage.
I'm
It's true,
still
it's
there. One day, I hope to learn what puberty is. But it really does feel like the festival has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, like rightly
Yeah.
so, and it's a sign of the success of all the efforts of both the artists and the management in years past. Unfortunately, we're kind of at a tipping point where we're not quite we're not Edmonton sized yet. But
No.
we're not Toronto sized anymore. We're
Yeah.
kind of in that like, oh, my limbs are stretching. What's happening to me phase? And that is a tough place to be. And I mean, like, you know, I've certainly made my views clear on a few things that I was frustrated with this year. But I also recognize that like, it's always tough on it's like when they're building a new subway.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the
Yeah.
ass right now. But I also didn't live through the building of the previous subway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna bitch about it because I can't go on Eglinton anymore. But I also get to use the subway. So all I'm going to say that, like,
Let's
I
keep this
think.
metaphor going.
All right, let's talk LRT, shall we? But I think like there's a lot of signs of that, and also, it's easy having now done Fringe for a bunch of years to be like, oh no, but like my experience 2 years ago was this.
Yeah.
But I also don't have to contend with the fact that like Ed's disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, okay, the festival is growing and is going to continue to grow. And
Yeah.
I think part of the reason Toronto is such a vicious, like, competitive market is there's so much theater in Toronto all the time that I think that's
Yeah,
kind of that's how we
trouble.
learn.
That's one of the things.
So
that-
when
yeah.
the Fringe happens, we're like, we gotta be like Mervish. We gotta have posters everywhere. We
Right.
gotta like fucking
I
destroy
just,
the
one
competition.
of the things that I like, other fringes, like the competition doesn't exist so much. It's like, it was in Montreal that I first heard there's audience enough for everyone.
That's
And
Which
that's-
was a lie.
Yeah, because
Montreal.
in
It's
Montreal,
actually
in
pretty
Montreal
low
that is
numbers
a lie,
there.
but
There is.
it's a good attitude to have that like we can share. Your success is not my failure.
Right.
If anything, it's going to fuel your own. Because if you're a person who's uninitiated to the Fringe and you go to a show and you love it, you're like, give me 10 more, please.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
so that's not
absolutely.
a bad thing.
Yeah.
No.
One thing that I will speaking to like the sort of like unwelcoming feeling that sometimes the Toronto Fringe can give off. I think part of that, and this has always been sort of like how I've sort of not justified it, but like sort of like my reasoning for why this may be is because Toronto has such a fairly recently burgeoning independent scene that like over the past, I would say like 6 or 7 years has just like exploded, and it's a big tight group of friends that don't actually get to see each other a lot of the time during the school year. Yeah. And then so when they see each other at the tent, it's like a reunion every year between all of these groups of friends that really don't get to see each other. So there's what's happening is these people being so excited to see each other that they forget that there's other people at this festival, right? And particularly over the past 2 years with the loss of the storefront Unit 102. We've lost a couple of our big meeting places, like where we would see each other every month or every 2 weeks, and that's a feeling I've seen echoed through a lot of my theater artist friends, particularly from the storefront. So that's I think that's amplified it a little bit. This sort of like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. Like we were so used to seeing each other, like we were still in fucking theater school when the storefront was around, and now it's like we either have to schedule hangouts or wait for the Fringe.
Yeah. And because the media, I think, also is taking the cue of the storefront theater in Unit 102 being closed, because they're like, oh, well, I'm going to spotlight these indie artists during the Fringe now.
Yes.
Which also might be a thing that will need to be adjusted as the years go on. But I did notice that, like, they're like, oh, we've missed this guy. Look, he's in the Fringe. Or like, oh, that girl's doing something super cool.
Yeah.
I also think something I noticed last night that I was actually really, really happy about, because I this year, I feel like last year I only grabbed church, I'll play, so like I was like tangentially involved, but like this year particularly, I've met so many fewer, because I love meeting artists or anything. I love talking about people's stuff and like seeing people's stuff. I've seen less this year, and I've met like no one this year, so it's nice to meet you. But it took a podcast because and part of it is, I mean, like it's a geographically slightly larger space than Ed's, and so as a result, it's very easy to make a little island. What was crazy though was last night they had the silent disco, which I was so skeptical of. Like I walked in just being like, yeah, all right.
I was nervous.
It was
going in.
fucking amazing, and what
so
was
good.
crazy was it was the first time I saw literally all of Fringe mix.
Yeah, everyone was just dancing together.
And suddenly a bunch of people who would not have met or talked to each other, it gave everyone like a, you know, it was like seeing good play with people you haven't met. Where you're like, oh, well, we just had a common experience, we can talk about this. And I mean, I know Fringe is like still figuring out what the programming looks like in the tent, but like, to me that was such an interesting example of just like, oh, suddenly there's like basically a baseline that everyone can talk about where either like, oh, were you at it? Oh, no, okay, well, here's what it was. It wasn't what I was expecting, like, blah, 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 blah. And that was really fucking nice. And I kind of wish that was earlier, because that would have been such a nice opening note to kind of like...
Has there been too much going on at Postscript that there hasn't been enough time for socializing? Or, like, what's...
No, I don't think so.
No.
Some of the events have been a smidge under advertised. And so I think people have just gone to hang out with people, and then there's been this other cool thing happening on the other side of the bar that you could also participate in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do appreciate the lack of stage this year, because I remember last year I came straight from a great performance. We were so fucking happy. All we wanted to do was talk about it. The actors were going to come join us afterwards. It was their like awful 10:45 a.m. for like a comedy musical slot. And we got to the Fringe tent. We were so excited to talk about the show, and then another Fringe musical like just like people had signed up for a slot on the stage, and they were fully mic'd, and they were not good. We were just like, all we wanted to do was talk about the show that we just enjoyed, and instead we were subjected to like, can we get a suggestion? We're gonna write a song about it. I'm like, this is what I was worried my friend's show was going to be.
They're being better about sort of dividing if you want to see what the performance
Yes, which
at the
is
end of
great.
the tent.
Yeah.
The only thing that's been like a little too loud has been the bands playing, but I think that might have just been their choice of how to sort of put this out.
Speaking of shows, what have you guys seen that you have loved?
Oh, Lighters in the Air. I
Seeing
love
that
that
today?
show.
I'm probably
seeing
not
it
going to
today.
get a chance to see that, and it breaks my fucking heart.
Yeah, I adored that. That's so good. I love dive bars. I love open mic culture, and I think that's a great example of it. And I am astounded. I've never seen. So Chris Hagen wrote this, and he wrote all the music, and he wrote the whole thing. And I've seen like shorter things that he's done. I've seen him do sketch, and I've never seen a full-on 80-minute musical production of his. I don't know that there have been other ones. And I think this is really great. It's solid performances throughout, and it's not a perfect show by any means, but it's a fantastic experience.
Nice.
And I gained a bunch of Fringe crushes watching it, so that's always good.
That's always good. That's always good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Has anyone seen Josephine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's-
incredible.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
like-
awesome. Like,
Yeah.
like
I think it's sold out for today, but if anyone can
Every
get a rush,
every
Oh, that's
Oh,
it. And
yeah.
they drive out after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
They're
wow.
out of
They're
town.
going to Winnipeg next, I think.
Yep.
They are,
So
yeah,
that's really
yeah.
great
Yeah,
for
we're
them.
doing
that
Winnipeg,
this
check
summer.
this out.
Yeah.
Josephine all the way.
Winnipeg
Yeah,
got it last year,
Oh,
and
shit,
it's
yeah.
and it's sold out almost
Yeah.
its whole
Wow.
thing.
Oh my God.
Because that show's got legs for days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had
Nice.
people warning me from the Ottawa Fringe and from
Yeah.
Montreal Fringe, like, if you don't buy in advance, Rebecca, you're gonna miss something
Yeah.
you really
Okay.
like.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's a polished, beautiful.
Wow.
Also, Ashley with a Y. I've seen that twice. I loved it so much.
Oh my God.
She's incredible, and also Scott White is great on the piano.
I feel like at this point we should give her like a Vegas show here.
Yep.
I would
Yes,
watch
like,
that.
Rent out a theater, just
Yeah.
have shows
I would-
every night.
I would go and see Ashley like every night if she
Wow,
had like
the
a
season
Vegas show.
pass, yeah.
Shit, yeah.
Yep.
Season pass to that.
This is the first Fringe where I've actually seen more comedy than musicals, which for me is
There's a
different.
lot of
Yeah.
comedy
Because there's
this
a
year.
lot of really
Yeah.
cool comedy this year.
Yeah.
That being said, like I did see The Last Party, Compulsion, and Polypeel. All were great, but they did sort of state they were in development, and I am curious to see what sort of the next step is for all three of those
Right.
musicals.
Yeah.
But I feel like this year, something about comedy was just
Yeah.
Well, it's been
in the forefront.
It's been coming up for a while. There's been being more and more sketch, more and more improv, more and more comedy. I saw two incredible improv shows, but they were also sort of sure things. I saw Entrances and Exits, which was
very funny.
amazing. When I heard that they were going to be doing an improvised farce, I was like, "That's impossible. You can't do that." We did an improvised police drama 2 years ago, and I was like, "Nope, that's harder than that." But no, it's fantastic. And then I saw D&D live. I was fortunate enough to see it when Colin Mockery was.
Oh,
was
fuck.
Oh, yeah, we were in the
star.
same audience.
Yeah.
Did you guys see Generally Hospital?
No,
I didn't.
It also got the Accessibility
Yeah.
Award.
Nice.
It was very funny. It was like a brand new troupe right out of the Second City Conservatory,
Mhm.
and you could tell like their energy was electric. They were so connected in every scene. Also, like at points where people corpsed, it was funny because like they were such good friends, like testing each other's
Yes.
Sure.
sort of
Yeah.
theatrical boundaries, if you will. But I think it was very funny because it's all the situations you've always been in a hospital.
Nice.
So everybody could relate. There was not a single sketch where I wasn't like hurting from laughing.
That's awesome.
I loved One Small Step.
Yes.
And yeah, I love everything that company does. Like,
Big ensemble work is amazing and hard to do.
and they did it in a week. That's
know.
what's insane.
Blew my
I was
mind.
like, please teach me how you put that show together in a week because it's crazy. I loved Summerland a few years ago,
Oh,
and
yes.
it rocked my world a few years ago. And this is like the same company, and I will watch them do anything. They have 7:00 show tomorrow night, and then they got Patrons Pick, so they have one right after it at 9:15 at Randolph, and it's so worth your time. I laughed. It's like they're so freaking talented. It's just
Oh, it's
insane.
so good. On the note of Patrons Pick, the best new play this year, Women of the Fur Trade, was very, very powerful.
Yeah.
That show was very under promoted.
Well, now here comes in the sort of the discussion that we were talking about with Al. Like, they are from Winnipeg, they weren't from Toronto, and so I think the Winnipeg Fringe is literally the most welcoming Fringe I've ever been
Yeah.
to. You basically just need to put up some posters and people are like, I want to support you.
Yes.
I don't think that happened here, unfortunately, and I had hoped sort of Toronto Fringe would sort of warn them, like, hey, here's the kind of things you might want to do to promote your show, because apparently Best New Play was not enough to just...
Well,
Yeah, I
because
didn't even know
in
what one
previous-
Best New Play until like halfway through the frame.
I-
But
it
in
wasn't very
previous
well
years,
advertised.
Best New Play has been something that Fringe has like promote.
Those
I've
have been
seen-
Toronto.
Yeah.
or-
Well, yes and no. So
Yeah.
they there were some partnerships that no longer exist
Yes.
for new play
Right.
that they gave you extra promotion. A and B. I was talking to someone about this the other day. There's an interesting arc because like Help Yourself won Best New Play right after Kim's.
Yeah.
So like all eyes on us, huge press because Kim's exploded.
Right.
And Help Yourself did very well. Like we had a great run of it.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting watching over the years because a couple of the Best New Play winners in the past few years have gotten kind of the 2N treatment, and I think it went from Kim's where it's like holy shit, surefire thing, like this is the fucking gold star, to just kind of like, oh no, this is just a play.
This is another play.
It's just another play, and you get a full-page ad in the program, which is very helpful. Although the programs this year matter less because everything's online.
Yeah.
But for my money, I like in the years, like maybe the 3 or 4 years right after Kim's, I was like, I must see the contest,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
some people liked it. That's cool. I like that, but I'm gonna go see the plays I want to see. I'm not gonna automatically run to this because it won.
Yeah.
But it's similar to what we were talking about earlier with reviews, right? It's like, cool, this was like a fistful of people's opinion, and that's rad. But, I'd rather go see this sketch comedy show that sounds really interesting than the show that I feel like I should see.
Yes. Yeah.
The show is ready to go up at Tarragon Theatre next season.
Okay.
Like, it was a shame to me that it didn't have such a full house and then like 60 people on the waiting list, because it deserved that kind of press and attention. And it was also a very topical conversation. Essentially, it was just sort of tracing during the Louis Riel period what was happening with the fur trade, and also sort of women's rights as wives, and as a Métis wife versus a wife of somebody who was in Parliament, and just it was just a very interesting conversation that didn't point any fingers, but it certainly illuminated a lot of truths I think we've known for a while.
I thought it was going to be a runaway hit of this festival coming into it. So I'm sort of surprised that hasn't happened.
It's too bad.
Well, hopefully it gets life beyond. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so hard when
It's touring, right?
Yeah,
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I think so.
I saw Anywhere.
Yeah.
Michael Ross Albert's.
Yeah.
I was so like on the edge of my seat from almost the first moment.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh.
Well, the two of them are incredible
Oh,
performers.
absolutely incredible performers. But it was just like, from the moment like you're up late, I'm like, what is going on here? And it just at no point did it really let up for me.
Yeah.
And when it ended, I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
holy shit!
There's this wonderful like slow leak of information.
Oh
that
yeah,
comes to the audience.
it does
Just, like,
not
little
let
drip of
yeah.
Do you have like
secrets.
a rock in your stomach?
Constantly.
I did
It's-
for almost the entire thing. It was just like, oh, what's
It's
going
modern
on?
Pinter. Like it's very
Oh,
very
yeah.
Pintery. Yeah. It's really good.
Did it pique your Pinterest?
It did.
Ah.
It did.
Jesus.
Did any of you see Awkward Hug?
No.
I've heard
I wanted to
nothing
do a
but
Corey
good things
show.
about
Yeah.
it. Raving
Awkward
about
Hug
the tent last
as
night.
well.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's because it's a really interesting premise. So Corey Tibert, who wrote it, it's a story of how when he was 19 years old, he knew that both his parents, that there was something different about them, and he didn't know until he was 19 that both his parents have cerebral palsy, because they just never mentioned it. Like he knew that they had some form of disability, but he never knew what it was. And so it's the story of like his entire life and like helping them move and slowly learning everything because they just never really leaked information.
Wow.
Like my favorite thing in the whole show is when he asked his parents how they met. It was like, hey, how they met? And his dad just went, rehab, and then never explained. And that's it. That's all he
That
knew
is
for
great.
20 years.
Yes. Jesus.
Did you guys enjoy the hostilities?
Yes,
Robert
I was
Show?
about to say that. Yeah.
Oh, that was so good.
It's great. It's great, and it's perfect. Like perfect venue, the Bovine.
Yeah.
I said to him afterwards, I was as a cynic, as
Yeah.
like as a notorious cynic. Things that I find inspiring make me uncomfortable. Like the things that I find genuinely inspiring make
Yeah.
me uncomfortable. And I was like, your show made me very uncomfortable.
I was ready to
Because I was like, this is like it's genuinely inspiring.
It is.
And
I wanted to conquer the world after that show.
absolutely, yeah.
Speaking of wanting to conquer the world after the show, I'm going to shout out some Bikeface.
Yeah.
So I mean, well-deserved praise. Obviously, has been lots of people have been chatting about it. But it's for me, it was like A, it was just a fucking great show. But B, So I know Natalie and I know Claire, and it was so strange. It's one of the first times I think I've seen someone write an intensely personal solo show and then get someone else to perform it that I've seen.
Natalie had previously performed.
I know,
it
yeah. And so it was a really trippy experience hearing Natalie, very clearly Natalie's voice, but also very clearly Claire's take on it. And I was saying to Claire afterwards, I was getting double vision occasionally, where I was like, you fully captured Natalie, but you're still being Claire. And it was kind of exactly what I want from one of those things where it's like you're performing the show of someone that you, because she knows Natalie, so like you're performing the show of someone you know.
Yeah.
And you're both embodying them, but also making it your own. And that, to me, that elevated it a lot, because it wasn't just like, here's a story that happened to someone I know, but I'm going to say it like it was me.
Yeah, there was an honesty to Claire's performance, I think, that was necessary.
Yeah.
One, in the casting process, just as we were sort of getting people to sort of audition and stuff, the biggest thing that struck us about Claire was that she herself is an adventurer. She's a traveler, she's a backpacker, and so it kind of just was this like kismet fit in the sense of like you two both possess the same sort of energy in the world. You put out that same like sort of thirst for adventure.
Well, and I was talking to someone who said that she was really apprehensive going in because she doesn't know Claire at all, and she was like, if this lady doesn't look like she rode a bike, I'm going to be livid. And I was like, that's a really good point, because like the entire tone of that show would be so gross if it was just someone who's like, yes, I rode a bike across Canada. I'm a twig. But anyway, it was great, and afterwards, like same thing with Rob and Joe, like for obviously for very different reasons.
Fair.
But I like that, and particularly because Fringe can be such a just like a fucking mental beatdown. Yeah, it's really nice to come out of a show, and Al, I haven't seen your show. I'm hoping to catch it. But again, my friend came out of it yesterday, and just I got a tweet, like a text storm from her, because she's like, I'm just gonna check out the show, and she's like, holy fuck, she's like, I'm feeling so many feels. She's like, I bought this pin, I wish I bought more.
I felt that way. I really enjoyed your show, Al.
Yeah, all right, well,
I was trying to describe, one of the people I know from work was like, what do I see at Fringe? I said, go see Al's show. And I was like, what is it about? I said, sort of dealing with insomnia, mental health at like a breakneck speed. Like, just like, hold on for the ride.
Are you every reviewer?
Oh my God! Steve Fisher, Glenn Sumi, Kelly Bedard, all of them together.
The problem I'm having with this show is because it's about a bunch of different things, and it's sort of hard to describe why it works. Is almost every single review is just a list of spoilers, just a list of like this happens and then this happens and this happens, so therefore this, and I'm like, yeah, but what if you let me do that part? But that's okay.
It was so much fun. Bruce Willis was a ghost the whole time.
This Fringe, I've tried not to read any reviews until after I've seen the show. So I actually went into yours being like, I know Al's style of storytelling, but other than that, I don't know anything, and I'm glad, because then everything was a surprise for me. And I was one of your audience members that was making like audible gasps.
Yeah.
I'm that lady.
Cool.
Did anybody see the Merkin sisters?
Yeah.
I love that show so much.
That's one of the weirdest shows I've
smoking
ever
vagina.
seen, but also so amazing. Except I was sitting beside these old ladies who spent half the show being like, so fucking stupid. This is so stupid. And then somewhere along the way, they
good.
Yes.
Nice.
But it was like half of the show being like, this is stupid.
They got one over.
Stupid.
Yeah.
And
I was sitting next to this dude who tried to leave 10 minutes into Morrow and Jasp.
Oh my God! What?
Yeah.
What did you?
He was on a date. He clearly just wanted to fuck this woman, and I guess he was like, I'll do the culture thing. So we were at the back of the Tarragon in that back row directly in front of the booth. And during one of the blackouts, he like stood up over her, and I'm like, what's he doing? Are they gonna have sex? What's happening? And then he's like, wait, what? And she's like, no, we're staying. And then he sat back down, and he's like, I don't understand this. And I literally spent the rest of the show just kind of wanting to talk to this guy and slap him a bit. And it was fun, but it was the same thing. By the end, he was laughing, he was into it. But it was such a weird, and he was just audibly talking during every blackout, and I was like, buddy, first time out, huh?
Yeah.
But it was fascinating, and like, again, I love those audiences that are like, that feel the need to vocalize
Yeah.
whatever they're experiencing. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand this show, so shut up. Who cares?
Yeah.
I know.
Like, I assumed I was going to see a very serious show about merkins.
Yes. Yes.
You just have to appreciate a show like that for what it is, and you will have so much fun.
There's like, I don't know if anybody goes into the Merkin sisters being like, so what's the plot? And if
Yeah,
they do,
yeah.
they're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
I really want to know what these ladies thought they were getting into. Like, if they were like, you
I
know,
don't know.
Yeah.
'cause
Or
they
do
just-
they know what a
Merkin is in the
Merkin is?
title.
Like,
Yeah. Actually, I watched somebody in the front row halfway through this show be like, so what's a Merkin? And their friend was like,
That's a different way.
oh, this is so much better.
It's a different way of saying American.
Oh, Space Hippo. Did anyone else see that?
I didn't get a chance to see it, no.
Oh, okay, so it's the Wishes Mystical Company. The reason I specifically went to Space Hippo versus Shadowland is it's the one where Elliot Loren is performing all the music live that he's composed for the entire Shadow Puppet show. Takes shadow puppetry to a whole new level. There was a point where they illuminated like the Milky Way with like a whole bunch of different lights making stars and constellations. It's not just sort of like cutouts that are black and white or whatever. Like everything is in color. Everything has like a stylistic, almost anime feel to it. And the way they use light and shadow to give you like 3D perspective on a flat screen blew my mind. Like I've seen other companies that do a very good job with shadow puppetry. Shout outs to like Mind of a Snail. They always do cool stuff.
Yeah.
But this had a whole bunch of new layers to shadow puppetry I didn't know existed.
It also gets my best title Fringe vote.
Space
Hippo.
Hippo.
Oh, yeah.
That's another thing,
Space Hippo and Police Cops in Space.
which I
If they
also
teamed up, we'd
saw
have
that
Oh
one.
my god!
Saw it twice. Loved it so much.
Yeah.
I saw Harvey and the Extraordinary.
How was that?
It was. I did not expect to have feelings at the end of that show.
Yeah.
I thought this is just going to be some little sweet show about whatever. And at the end of the show, I was like, okay, I'm feeling things, and I did not expect to feel things at the end of this show. But thank you. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah. Aside from theater, have there been any moments in Fringe that you've really that have stood out for you? What was your favorite Fringe moment this year?
Silent disco, baby.
Sound just I got to go on in my own show, which was fun.
Yeah.
Was Michael sick?
No,
Or-
so it's so funny because everyone's like, "Oh my
Michael's
god,
famous.
Mike, are you okay?" I'm like, "No, he's just employed." So Mike is he plays Terrence on Kim's Convenience, who up till now has been like sort of a second tier character. He works with the main characters, but he's kind of like the gag character who shows up to be awkward.
Butt of the joke.
The butt of the joke, yeah, 100%, and he kills it. But so they're on season 3 right now, and when I cast him, he's like, "Look, like I've got a first right refusal from Kim's." I'm like, "Yeah, like fucking yes, your TV show should have that.
Yeah.
Continue to be on TV."
Yeah.
So that was fun. But he's like, we've never gone past 7 p.m. and the odds that I'll have to miss a show are so low. I'm like, okay, well look, like I wrote it, I'm directing it, like I can learn the part, and if shit goes bad, then I'll just do it. Anyway, so he shows up right at the beginning of the run. He's like, okay, so apparently my character's really big this season. No one told me, so I'm very excited. But so he warned me that like the odds of him not being able to make the show are pretty high. And then the day before he was on set, and he asked like one of the ADs, and they're like, "Oh God, no, you're not getting out." So we did the usual thing where like Kat Sandler came out and like hyped me and be like, "He just learned it today." And I'm like, "Well, strictly speaking, yes, but like I'd also spent some time looking at it." But it was wild, and it was super fun because like I used to perform a lot. I haven't in a long time, and it was just kind of cool to get to do it. It's also a gross part, and like you feel like shit at the end of it, which was great, but also terrible. It was super fun and weird, but it really was one of those moments. What's so funny is I didn't realize after the fact. Like in Shaky Shake, we've had the director go on so many fucking times.
Yeah.
Like, we have a running joke that by the end of our run, whenever we finally stop, like she will have played all of the parts because she's played about half. But neither of my castmates had ever had a director go on, and they did not think this was going to fly. Because I was like, I didn't go on with the script. I was like, I know the show, let's do it. And I could just fucking tell. And they came in when I was working on the one scene I didn't know. So they came in and I was like, oh God, the line's, fuck, what's the line? My name is Jeff. Fuck, okay, my name is Jeff. Oh, Jesus. And they were so nice and so supportive.
No.
I saw them go to the bar. I saw them order some Jameson. But it was great. And afterwards, they were both so complimentary. But yeah, it was wild, and it was just a really cool Fringe experience. And also because this is my first like adult show that I've written and directed, it was really cool to get to like live that and really kind of ride that fringe wave in a really cool way.
Audiences love that though. Like we're so on your side, and
Yeah.
it just makes it so much. That happened at One Small Step too, and it was just magical, right? Because like, we're all on their side, and I love that.
Well, people
Love
love like it's the theater story, and actually I've had people since then be like, "So you going on?" Because they want that theater story of
Yes.
like,
Oh,
sure
that
they
time
do.
I was
this
there
thing
when-
happened.
I was there when the director went on.
Was
Yeah.
anybody, speaking of I was there, was anybody there when, was it First Dates, when the power went out?
Yes.
Finished outside.
And they finished
David
it. David
Fox
Fox
did a
in like
monologue?
his underwear
Yep.
out on
Yeah.
the steps of St. Vlad's.
Yeah.
With a guitar
But you know, those are stories that live on because I still
Yeah, you don't
remember
forget those.
people talking about the first time that Evil Dead the musical was performed, and there was like the big blackout
Yeah.
on the
Yes.
eastern seaboard, and they were scheduled to perform, so they just like moved everything to the parking lot beside the Transac and had a bunch of cars turn their lights on and
Amazing.
performed it there.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah,
It was
those
the
are like
coolest.
those are the stories that like just sort of live in forever.
Mm-hmm.
So on the note of stories from the Fringe, have you guys attended the show Stories
The
from the Fringe?
award-winning show.
Yeah,
Stories
yes,
from
the
Fringe.
Tosho knife,
The Tasho Knife Awards.
Really?
cutting edge award.
That's
Which I consider the most coveted award of Toronto.
Because it is entirely based on popularity.
It's,
Well,
I-
the reward is so huge.
Hey,
It's a great
I feel like
If
it's
there's
based
one
on
thing
who
that's-
remembers to vote.
Yeah, yeah.
there's one thing that is like unique to this city is that no other festival will give you a weapon as a reward. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I attended 2 of those, and they were some really good. I actually also then spoke in one as well. So
Nice.
let's see, I'll give you some of the top stories. So my favorite BYOV story was about 10 years ago. There was a real life kidnapping experience, like that
Right,
was
yeah,
in real
Oh
time.
shit! I do remember
It was
that.
a show
Yes.
where it was like someone being kidnapped, and there was only 3 audience members because it was in a car.
Yeah.
And a
Oh,
neighbor
yes.
called the police on them, so they go to an
Yes.
intersection and 4 cop cars barricade them in.
Yes.
And like the actor has his hands on the steering wheel, and he was gonna radio the stage manager, but he went, "Oh, they might shoot me." So he kept his hands there. They came in and talked to him, and then luckily the stage manager heard the commotion
Oh
from
my
around the
God.
corner and like ran over and was like, "Don't shoot!"
Yeah.
And, like, so that was a
in
crazy
van,
story,
right? That,
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was just nuts.
And my understanding was they'd let the cops know, but then they drove into a different jurisdiction.
Yes.
And so new cops were like, no.
Yes.
It was somebody who, like, I guess, was in a house that had seen this happen multiple times. So it was actually like a good Samaritan being like, "I'm gonna
I
save
think there's
this."
a cult next door.
Another good one was a BYOV story where they were doing a show in a parking lot. So they would put like posters around this parking lot saying, "By 6, a show will be happening." Well, one guy did not get his car out of the parking lot in time, so they did an entire show on rollerblades around his car, and then the JP Towing shows up in the middle of the performance, so they integrate it into their performance as like JP Towing takes away this poor man's
Oh my
car.
god.
And then the one that like I told was just I was in Edinburgh, and of course faulty sockets everywhere because everything's like 6 centuries old. And basically I went to like plug in the iPad for my show and like press all the cues, and the iPad just wouldn't work because they'd had a power outage. So in the dark with just like candles, I performed my very last show of like the run, and like I had no sound cues, I had no backing music, so I did half of this like the cues with my mouth, and I just sang everything a cappella. And then of course the power goes on about like 2 minutes before the show ends. So the last song I sing is called "Sail Away to the Sea." So halfway through, I just hear the music come on for the beginning of "Sail Away to the Sea." So I just like sing it 1.5 times. But like the audience came in and I was like, "Hey guys, so here's what's happened. I'm sure you've noticed there's no lights." And then they actually were so supportive.
Yeah.
And after people were like, "That was like a unique experience. I'll tell people about that." Like,
Nice.
so like it's true. Audience members want to be on your side.
Oh yeah.
And if you give them reasons, they will so support you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, kudos to you for just going on with like.
Thanks.
I saw the show. That is a meaty role.
Yeah.
And it's
Yes.
got intricate, complex shifts as a
Yeah.
person.
Well, and I cheated because I just used a lot of Mike's performance, and like I was there every night, so it was just watching it and like feeling out the beats. And honestly, like when you've seen a show that many times in a row, you just because we have a show every night, so like you know the rhythms and you know the things. But yeah, it was cool, and it was funny because I'm like, I'm gonna do as close to Mike's performance as I can. I don't want to fuck up my other actors.
Yeah.
And then the minute it started, I could hear myself. I'm like, oh shit, this is just my version of it. Here we go. Yeah, but no.
It's a cool debate that your show propositions the audience.
Yeah.
Really
Yes.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, today I'm looking forward to seeing Prank as well to see Well, you guys have to talk about internet fans.
Oh, Danny's also going on that. too.
Yes.
Better.
I'll be playing both of them.
Both
That's
Crystal
the
and
funny
Cindy.
thing. Yeah.
Turns out there's never been a Sandy Patrick. It's always been Danny Patrick.
Yeah.
Well, we're about the end of the hour, so I want to thank you guys for having this conversation. Any final thoughts about Fringe that you'd like to share?
48 hours left. See as much as you can.
Oh my god, only 48 hours left.
Yeah, I think like for me the big, and this goes back to our reviewing conversation, but the biggest interesting thing, I've actually lost sight of this because I used to when I was just fringing, like when I was just going to Fringe, I'd go through the book, I'd circle all the things that I thought were interesting, and I'd don't see as many of them as I could. And then I became a review whore, and I was like, well, okay, well maybe I don't need to see this, blah, blah, blah. And this year my schedule was fucked, so I kind of did the same thing, but I was like, no, I'm going to make an active thing, look through it all. But then I absolutely fell back on reviews. And I feel so shitty about it because I know I missed a bunch of things I would have liked.
Yeah.
So I guess my like parting advice for the Fringe is like, go see that fucking show that sounds interesting. Fuck whatever reviews have said, but like, if there's something you're just like, no, that's kind of fun, or like, oh, that sounds up my alley, just go see that. Like, because I honestly, I've never had a bad experience when I've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
If you're already interested in what they have to say, there's a good chance you're going to enjoy yourself.
absolutely, yeah.
Toronto tends to be a little bit tied to the idea of reviews. Because you can see the audience is sort of like shift when the reviews come out. And I sort of wish there were more opportunities for people who go to see a show to share their little review.
Some
of
kind
what they
of
thought.
Fringe tent, if you will.
As if there was some way for people to share that at a Fringe
Yeah.
tent, if you will,
Or
or
some kind of
a Fringe
hashtag.
buzz. Do they
Well,
still?
yeah, they do Fringe Buzz forums in Montreal, which I
Yeah.
always thought was pretty nice. But
Oh,
you know,
sure.
there is that whole wall right when you walk into the drinky rink to the right. Like it's just like, you know, just drawn to shit. But it could just be a giant place for people to say, oh, I saw this. And I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it.
Winnipeg does that with the Jennies. There's the Jenny wall.
Yeah.
Where audience members will write what they liked about a show. And it's really cool because they will actually group them together by show, and you
Oh,
can
nice.
see
Yeah.
what
That's
audiences
a
are
great
responding
idea.
to.
But you know, Twitter and Instagram both exist.
Yes.
Exactly.
And are very frequented by
Twitter's
the
been
youth, I've been
strong.
told.
I've tried to tweet my
Yeah.
reviews as much
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Even if you don't, if anyone's listening who's not a performer, even if you don't want to like just publicly state your thoughts about something, just writing to that company or something, just being
sure,
like,
yeah.
hey, I had a great time.
Yeah.
Like
It matters.
it's not a lot of
It does
effort,
matter.
and it can change somebody's festival in
Yeah,
general
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
get that. So
Yes, it can.
One last shout out I gotta give to Adam's show tonight, Asperger's Tales of a Social Misfit. All the advance sales he's donating to Nightwood in honor of all the support he's gotten.
Oh, shit.
So go and get advance tickets for his show. It's at 11 o'clock tonight
At the Annex Theater.
at the Annex Theater. If you can't go, buy tickets and get somebody else to go.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know.
Last show, and it's really cool that he's donating all of his profits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's basically in honor of all the support he's received, because initially a lot of it was female artists from the
Yes,
Fringe.
yeah.
And so he is giving back, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it's a good show.
Yes.
He's a one of a kind comedian.
Yes.
Nice. Well, all right. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so
This has been a Homebody Productions production.